People say that when you marry someone, you marry their family too. I always thought that was just a cute phrase people said to justify awkward holidays and in-law group chats. I never realized how deeply true and how deeply exhausting that statement would become. I'm Emily. I'm 29, married to the love of my life. And until recently, I considered myself a pretty rational person. I don't like drama. I don't jump to conclusions. I don't snoop or accuse or stir the pot just for the sake of it. I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt, even when they don't exactly deserve it. But sometimes trusting people makes you the fool. I work in digital marketing, mostly remote, which gives me time to take care of our home, garden a bit, and spend too much time with our golden retriever, Benji, who honestly gets more excited to see my husband than I do. I'm not flashy. I wear minimal makeup, I reuse gift bags, and I get excited about seasonal candles. In other words, I live pretty simply, and I like it that way. I married my husband 3 years ago after dating for 4. We were that couple people either rooted for or got secretly annoyed by. We met in college, moved in after graduation, and honestly, life felt pretty good. Until Rachel. Rachel is my husband's younger sister, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible. If I could have chosen my in-laws like I chose my wedding flowers, Rachel would have been left out of the bouquet. There's always been tension between us. She comes off as one of those women who sees other women as competition by default. From the very beginning, I could feel her judging me. My clothes, my voice, the way I speak to her brother, even the way I laugh at his jokes. She never said anything outright cruel. She didn't have to. It was always in the way she said things. "Oh, that's what you wore to the dinner? You're so bold. I wish I could pull that off." Or when we announced our engagement, "Wow, that ring is definitely you. Unique." My ring meant the world to me. It wasn't some mass-produced Tiffany's band. It was my grandmother's diamond, something passed down through generations, set in a custom band my husband designed. It wasn't huge, but it was elegant, understated, a part of me. That ring was one of the first things Rachel ever commented on. "I could never wear something that flashy," she said once, "but it makes sense for you. You seem like you'd need people to know." I didn't even know how to respond. What was I supposed to say? Sorry my dead grandmother had good taste? That's the thing about Rachel. She never argues directly. She pokes, she undermines. And when you call her out, she turns it around. "You're being sensitive. It was just a joke. I can't say anything around you, can I?" I kept my distance. I showed up when I had to. Holidays, birthdays, the occasional family BBQ. But I never texted her first, never invited her over unless my husband insisted, and never ever let her upstairs in our home. Until I did. And looking back now, that was the beginning of the end. If you ask Rachel, she's always the victim. She's the victim when her job doesn't pan out. She's the victim when her landlord raises rent. She's the victim when her friends pull away, or her latest boyfriend stops texting back. Nothing is ever her fault. Life is just cruel to her and kind to everyone else, especially me. She once told me, after one too many mimosas at Easter brunch, that I was the kind of woman who always got everything without even trying. That I had the husband, the job, the magical golden retriever life, and I didn't even know how lucky I was. I just sat there blinking at her, a mouthful of spinach quiche half chewed. I didn't even know how to respond to that level of projection. To be clear, Rachel isn't some cartoon villain. She's not setting fires or poisoning my coffee. She's charming in public, posts filtered selfies with self-deprecating captions like, "Ignore the bags under my eyes. It's been a week." And always somehow finds a way to make conversations circle back to how hard she has it. She flirts with men she doesn't like just to feel wanted. She gets in friend groups, then slowly turns them against each other. She accidentally forgets to bring things back when she borrows them. One time she house sat for us and lost a pair of diamond studs my husband gave me for our first anniversary. Swore she never saw them. Months later, I saw them in a mirror selfie she posted online. When I pointed it out, she said, "Oh, I thought those were mine from Zara." Zara doesn't sell diamonds. My husband made excuses, like he always does when it comes to her. She probably didn't mean it like that. Or Rachel's just got a hard time showing love. He grew up watching her blow up and fall apart so often that he doesn't even flinch anymore. He's desensitized. But I'm not. From day one, Rachel has resented me. She's never said it aloud, but I feel it in the way she treats me. Like I took something that was supposed to be hers. Maybe it's her brother's attention. Maybe it's the stability she never got to have. Or maybe it's something more childish than that. Maybe she just wants what I have because she doesn't have it yet. She mimics my outfits, my hair. Once she showed up to a family cookout in the exact same dress I wore to my engagement party 2 years prior. I pointed it out playfully, and she rolled her eyes. It's not that deep, Emily. It's just a dress. You don't own the color navy. Every interaction with her is like being slowly poked with a fork. Nothing deep enough to bleed, but just sharp enough to hurt. And the worst part? She always plays innocent, always makes me look like the problem. There's only so much quiet swallowing a person can do before the bitterness builds up. And even then, I still tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Until one afternoon, I let her into my house, alone, for less than half an hour. And not long after that, the ring disappeared. It started like any other morning. I had just come back from a workout, hair still damp, gym bag half unzipped by the front door. I was rushing through my routine. Coffee, emails, quick shower, before an 11 a.m. Zoom meeting. I was halfway through tying my robe when I reached toward my dresser to grab my wedding ring. And froze. The trinket dish was empty. My stomach didn't drop immediately. Not right away. I told myself it was probably in the bathroom, or on the nightstand, or maybe I had put it in my bag without thinking. I do that sometimes with my AirPods, but I checked, and checked again, and again. Pulled every drawer, dug through my dirty clothes, tore through the sheets, emptied my bag, flipped the lining inside out. Nothing. The trinket dish still sat there, untouched, undisturbed. But the ring was gone. That's when the sinking feeling hit me. Not dread, not fear. Something quieter but worse. That awful, creeping sense that something you love has been taken from you, and that it wasn't an accident. I walked around the house like a ghost, checking places I'd never even consider putting a ring. The microwave, the fridge, the washing machine. I even checked inside a box of pasta in the pantry, as if I'd blacked out and hidden it like some glittering squirrel. Nothing. The meeting came and went. I stared at the screen while coworkers talked about campaign metrics, nodding like I was listening. But all I could think about was my grandmother's diamond. The way it used to catch sunlight in the car. The weight of it on my finger. The first time my husband slipped it on me and said, "This was always meant for you." I waited until he got home that night before saying anything. I didn't want to sound crazy. I wanted to believe it would just turn up. He walked in, dropped his keys in the bowl, and kissed the top of my head like always. "Hey," I said quietly. "Have you seen my wedding ring?" He paused. "No. Isn't it on your dresser?" I shook my head. "It's gone. I've looked everywhere." He frowned and walked upstairs with me. We tore through the room together, checked every room. He even got a flashlight and checked the air vents. Nothing. "It has to be somewhere," he said. "You probably just took it off and forgot." I nodded. Maybe. But I didn't believe that. Not for a second. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my robe, hands clasped like I was praying for logic to kick in. And then I said it softly, almost hoping he wouldn't hear me. "Do you think your sister might have taken it?" His head snapped toward me. "What?" "Rachel. She was here last week, the day she borrowed that book. I left her alone downstairs for 20 minutes and..." He cut me off. "Don't start this." "I'm not starting anything. I'm just saying she was the only one in the house besides me." He said, rubbing his temples. "Come on, that's a serious accusation." "I'm not accusing. I'm just trying to figure out what happened." His voice sharpened. "So we're blaming my sister now?" I looked up at him. "I'm not blaming anyone, but it's not in the house. I've checked. You've checked. No one else has been here." He let out a frustrated sigh and stepped back. Rachel wouldn't do that. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the pit in my stomach only grew heavier. For the next few days, I tried to pretend like life was normal. I made breakfast. I worked. I walked Benji. I even forced myself to put on a smile when my husband cracked jokes at dinner. But everything felt off. Like someone had shifted the furniture in my life half an inch to the left, and now nothing lined up the way it used to. I stopped mentioning the ring. After the conversation with my husband, I could feel that invisible wall go up between us. Not overtly. He still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still held my hand on the couch. But it was in the way he looked at me. Like I was ungrateful, or worse, paranoid. I could see it in his eyes. You don't trust my family, and maybe I didn't. But I also didn't want to fight. So I kept quiet. I told myself maybe I did lose it. Maybe I was stressed and scatterbrained and accidentally dropped it in the trash with a paper towel, or left it in a hoodie pocket I hadn't checked yet. I even texted my gym and asked if anyone had turned in a ring. The front desk guy said no, but he'd keep an eye out. That ring haunted me. Not just because of its value or the diamond or even the history. It was the weight of it. The presence it had in my life. The physical symbol of a commitment I cherished. Now when I touched my ring finger, it felt naked, hollow. I tried to fill that space. I wore a plain gold band I'd bought years ago on Etsy. It looked fine. No one commented on it. But I hated it. I hated how light it felt. Like a placeholder in a story that had taken a sharp turn. I even tried convincing myself that material things shouldn't matter that much. That I still had my marriage, my memories, the meaning of the ring, even if I didn't have the object. But late at night, I would lie awake and obsess. Where was it? Who had it? Why would they take it? Every time I thought about Rachel, I felt like I was being unfair. She hadn't done anything concrete. I had no proof. I had no witness. No footage. Just a whisper in the back of my mind that kept getting louder. Still, I told myself to stop. I told myself to move on. Until the cracks started to show. Until things stopped making sense. I didn't go looking for proof. At least, not at first. After that initial fight with my husband, I convinced myself to let it go. I wasn't going to tear apart our marriage over a hunch. I told myself it would do more damage to chase shadows than to accept that some things, some really important things, just go missing. But the human brain doesn't work that way. It doesn't forget. It files things away quietly, stacking small details into strange little corners, waiting until the pile is tall enough to come crashing down. The first strange moment came a week after the argument. I was folding laundry in the bedroom and grabbed my husband's hoodie, the one he'd worn the day Rachel visited. I shook it out like always, and something hard hit the floor. My heart jumped. It wasn't the ring. It was a single cufflink, one he hadn't worn in over a year. Somehow it had found its way into the pocket of a hoodie he never wore to anything formal. I brought it downstairs and asked him about it. He looked confused. That's weird. I haven't worn those since your cousin's wedding. We shrugged it off. But something about it bothered me. Not because the cufflink was important, but because it didn't belong there. It had no reason to be in that pocket. It felt like a breadcrumb dropped in the wrong forest. That night, I lay awake thinking about Rachel's visit. I replayed it over and over like security footage in my head. She asked to borrow a book. She arrived early, unannounced. I let her in, made tea, and left her alone for 20, maybe 25 minutes. The book she borrowed? Atomic Habits. And she barely skimmed it the last time I saw her. I remember thinking that day how ironic it was. Rachel, who once said, "Consistency is for boring people," suddenly wanted a book about self-improvement? Weird. I went into the living room and pulled the rest of the books from the shelf she'd been browsing. They were all slightly misaligned, tilted just enough to notice if you were looking for it, which I hadn't been. Now I was. A few nights later, my husband and I were having dinner with his parents. Rachel wasn't there. She was busy with a new project, whatever that meant. Midway through dinner, my mother-in-law casually asked if we'd had any break-ins in the neighborhood. No, I said. Why? Oh, Rachel mentioned you'd been feeling unsafe lately. I thought maybe there'd been a burglary. I blinked. She said what? She said you were missing something? Sentimental? She frowned. I assumed you found it. I felt the blood drain from my face. I hadn't told anyone besides my husband that the ring was missing. Not his parents, not friends, no one. So how the hell did Rachel know? I tried to play it cool. Yeah, just misplaced something. I think it got thrown out by mistake. But my brain was already sprinting in the background. Did she say anything else? Had she told someone I accused her? Was this her way of laying groundwork for a story before I could? I didn't say anything to my husband in the car. I didn't want another fight. But that night, I went down the rabbit hole. I searched Rachel's Instagram, which I hadn't looked at in weeks. Her account was public. Her last few posts were the usual curated mess. Sunset selfies, her dog, a latte with a heart in the foam. But something caught my eye. In one photo, she was holding a champagne glass, laughing at some rooftop event. And on her hand, barely visible, was a glint of gold. It was blurry, but I zoomed in. The band looked familiar. It wasn't identical, not obviously. But something about the shape, the thickness of the band, the slight oval angle of the setting, it made my stomach twist. It looked like my ring. Or at least like it could be my ring. I stared at that photo for hours. I found myself flipping back through my own old photos. Wedding pictures, anniversary shots, mirror selfies, holding them side by side, comparing angles and shadows. The ring in her photo had a similar presence, that same vintage elegance. My exact diamond had a tiny dark inclusion on the lower left edge, barely visible to the naked eye. I zoomed in on Rachel's photo until the pixels broke apart. No way to be sure, but I couldn't unsee it. From there, more little things started surfacing. Not physical proof, just patterns. Rachel's texts to my husband increased suddenly. Before, she'd go weeks without replying. Now she was sending memes, asking for rides, texting about their childhood memories, always looping him into warm nostalgia, always ending with, "Love you, big bro." She even asked to drop something off at our house while I was out. My husband agreed without telling me until afterward. I asked him what she dropped off. "Just some old photos," he said. Nothing important. But she had been inside again, alone, without me. And just like that, every small thing became suspicious. My anxiety was like a frayed wire sparking in the back of my brain. And the more I tried to dismiss it, the worse it got. I couldn't relax in my own home. I couldn't focus at work. I started dreaming about the ring, waking up in cold sweats with the feeling that it was right there, under my pillow, just out of reach. That's when I stopped caring about seeming paranoid. I knew what my gut was telling me, and I was finally ready to listen. Rachel's birthday fell on a Sunday that year. Late spring, perfect weather. The kind of day where the sun hits the backyard just right and makes everything look a little more magical than it really is. Her parents planned a small brunch at their house. Bagels, fruit platters, mimosas, and way too many pastel decorations for a 31-year-old woman who claimed to hate the spotlight. I didn't want to go. I nearly bailed last minute, using a fake stomachache as an excuse. But I knew that would just start another argument with my husband. He'd already made it clear that the Rachel thing was wearing on him. That if I wanted to accuse her of something that serious, I needed proof, not vibes. So I went. I wore a simple blue wrap dress, gold earrings, the same empty left ring finger I'd gotten used to keeping tucked in my pocket. My husband noticed but didn't say anything. We drove in silence. The second I walked into the backyard, I felt it. That feeling you get when a room full of people turns into a stage and you're not in on the script. Rachel was already holding court, standing by the drink table, glass of champagne in one hand, laughing at something her dad had just said. And on her finger, my breath caught. It was there, the ring. My ring. She wasn't even hiding it. It was on her right hand, not the left. But everything else was unmistakable. The band was the same thickness. The setting had that exact vintage curve, modernized just slightly by the custom jeweler we'd used. The diamond, even from across the yard, caught the light in that same familiar way. A very specific glint, warm-toned and a little sharp at the edges, like a drop of sunlight trapped in glass. My knees actually buckled. I don't know how long I stood there staring. The sound of her laugh, the clinking of glasses, people mingling around us, it all just blurred into static. I couldn't hear anything, couldn't think straight. My husband leaned in and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just dizzy. It's hot." He offered to get me water. I waved him off. I needed to get closer. I waited until she was standing alone, scrolling on her phone with her signature bored expression. I walked up casually, pretending to look for napkins. She looked up, smiled like nothing was wrong. "Emily," she said with fake surprise. "You made it." I nodded. Wouldn't miss it. I glanced down, closer now. There was no doubt. The diamond had a tiny scuff on the bottom of the setting, barely visible. My grandmother had chipped it on a porcelain sink decades ago. I used to trace it with my thumb when I was anxious. It was there, a perfect, undeniable imperfection. That was my ring. My heart was beating so fast I thought I'd throw up. But I stayed still. I couldn't go off. Not yet. Not in front of everyone. Instead, I smiled politely and asked, "That's a beautiful ring. Is it new?" Rachel blinked like she hadn't even realized she was wearing it. Then she glanced down, shrugged, and said, "Oh, this? Just something I found at a vintage shop. Isn't it cute?" I nearly laughed. Vintage shop. My ring, from my dresser, that I had worn every day for 3 years. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her wrist and rip it off her finger. But I didn't. I just stared at her, letting the silence do the talking. She smiled again, too quickly. Her eyes darted sideways. "Why? Does it look like yours or something?" I smiled back. "Yeah," I said softly. "It really does." Rachel's smile twitched. That fake too sweet expression she always wore when she was trying to look innocent. But her eyes couldn't keep up. I'd seen it before. The day she accidentally spilled wine on my dress before our rehearsal dinner. The time she said my dog looked like a flea market reject while laughing in front of guests. This was the same smile she wore right before she pulled a pin out of someone else's balloon. "Oh no," she said with mock concern, raising her glass. "You think I stole your ring?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Loud enough that a few people nearby turned their heads. "I didn't say that," I replied evenly. "But you were thinking it." She sipped her drink, then tilted her head with exaggerated sympathy. Sweetie, maybe you should talk to someone. You've always seemed a little anxious." I felt the blood rush to my ears. "I'm fine. I just said it looked familiar. That's all." Rachel leaned in slightly, just enough so only I could hear. Her tone dropped to a quiet, razor-thin whisper. "You gave it up, Emily. You probably tossed it with a greasy napkin while baking another one of your tragic Pinterest pies. You don't get to act like a victim just because you're careless." My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it behind my teeth. I looked down at the ring again. My ring. It was mine, and we both knew it. I didn't even realize how tense my posture had become until my husband touched my arm. He'd returned with a glass of water and was now looking between us. "Everything okay?" he asked cautiously. Rachel's face lit up again like a switch had flipped. "Oh, we're great," she said too brightly. "Emily just thinks I broke into your house and stole her wedding ring. Isn't that hilarious?" The conversation around us stuttered to a halt. My husband blinked, caught between confusion and discomfort. "Wait, what?" "She thinks I stole her ring," Rachel repeated, louder now, like she was performing for the backyard crowd. "Can you believe that? God forbid she just lost it like a normal person." "I didn't lose it," I said, low and steady. Rachel laughed again, hollow, sharp, and pointed. "No, of course you didn't. You've always been so perfect, right? The golden girl with the golden retriever, little Miss Pinterest crying over her mismatched plates and organic candles." I saw my mother-in-law glance over, then my father-in-law, then my husband again. His brow furrowed deeply now. Rachel's voice got colder. "You think you're better than me," she hissed. "But you're not. You just got lucky. You married into the one decent man left in the family, and now you think you own him. You think that ring made you untouchable." She held up her hand. "Well, guess what? You lost it. And now it's mine." The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved, no one spoke. Rachel smiled again, but it faltered. She scanned the group, our in-laws, her cousins, friends, and she saw it. The subtle shift in their expressions. No one was laughing. No one was coming to her defense. Disgust. Quiet, restrained, but unmistakable. Even her mother looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. My husband turned toward her slowly. "Rachel? What the hell?" Rachel scoffed. "Oh, come on. You really believe she didn't just drop it somewhere?" "No," he said. His voice was quiet, firm. I believe her now. She blinked like he'd slapped her. The mask cracked. Rachel looked at me with pure hatred. Nothing clever or sarcastic this time. Just raw venom. "You really think this'll change anything?" she whispered. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because everyone had seen her for who she was, and the damage was already done. Rachel's words hung in the air like a slap. "Well, guess what? You lost it. And now it's mine." That sentence, that one line. The silence that followed was so still I could hear the clink of someone's mimosa glass being set down on the patio table 20 feet away. I didn't have to say anything. I didn't need to, because everyone in earshot heard what she just said. And suddenly, it wasn't just me staring at her. It was her parents, her cousin, Jordan, even my husband's Aunt Carol, who rarely left the food table unless someone started talking politics. My mother-in-law blinked slowly, confusion and dawning realization mixing into something quiet and dangerous. "Wait, how did you know it was Emily's ring?" Rachel faltered. "What?" "You just said she lost it, then said it's yours now," her mom continued carefully. "That means you knew it was hers." Rachel laughed. Too hard, too fast. "Oh my God, are you serious? Are we seriously going to do this?" No one answered. Even the lightest conversations had died. People on the other side of the yard were watching now, craning their necks slightly, pretending not to. "I mean," Rachel started, waving her hands. "It's just a figure of speech. I didn't mean it like that." "No," said her dad, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. That's not a figure of speech. That was very specific. Rachel's eyes darted back to me, desperate now. She's been obsessing about that ring for weeks. You don't think that got in my head? Maybe I thought it looked like hers. Maybe I was joking. Were you? I said quietly. Were you joking? She spun toward me. Why would I want your life, Emily? I never said you did. But she was spiraling now. Her breathing was faster, her voice climbing. You always act so perfect. Like you're the poster child for suburban happiness. Your curated little life with your seasonal candles and your homemade granola. You think you're better than everyone else just because you've never had to crawl your way out of something. Her brother, my husband, finally stepped forward. You broke into our house, didn't you? Rachel's face drained. I didn't... She stopped herself, then corrected. I didn't break in. The door was unlocked. I left something there and came back to get it. When? He asked. She hesitated. A few days after I came to borrow the book. So you let yourself into our house without telling us, he said, and then magically ended up with Emily's missing wedding ring. Rachel crossed her arms, trying to rebuild the wall, but her voice cracked. It wasn't locked. I thought it was fine. Did you take anything else? His voice was like ice now. Oh my God, are you hearing yourselves? She snapped. You're all acting like I'm some criminal. You're going to turn on me over a stupid piece of jewelry? My mother-in-law stepped in then. Not loud, not angry. Just disappointed. It's not about the ring, Rachel. It's about what you chose to do. You knew it was hers, and you wore it to your own birthday party. Rachel opened her mouth like she had something big to say, but nothing came out. The silence turned heavy again. Aunt Carol muttered, "What kind of person does that?" Rachel looked around like a cornered animal. Her composure fractured completely now. You've all been waiting for a reason to hate me. Every single one of you. I've always been the one who gets blamed when things go wrong. It's not my fault Emily leaves her crap out like it's a free-for-all. She turned to me again, face twisted with bitterness. You want the ring back so bad? Fine. She yanked it off her finger and threw it toward me. It hit the grass a few feet short and vanished in the blades. People gasped. I didn't move. Not yet. Rachel stormed past us, muttering, "Screw this. I don't need this family's fake-ass moral high ground." No one stopped her. Not even her parents. She slammed the gate on her way out. The sound echoed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my husband slowly walked to where the ring had landed and knelt down, parting the grass gently until he found it. He turned it over in his hand, then looked at me. The expression on his face, grief, guilt, and something like relief, was hard to describe. He handed me the ring without a word. I held it. And for the first time in weeks, I felt whole again. I didn't expect it to end at the party. I should have. It should have ended the moment she stormed out and left the ring behind like a spoiled child throwing her last toy. But people like Rachel don't go quietly. They don't admit guilt. They reframe it. They revise history and cast themselves in the starring role. So when I opened Instagram the next morning and saw her new post, I wasn't surprised. It was a photo of her standing alone on a rocky trail, backlit by sunrise, one hand shielding her eyes like she was peering into a bright future. The caption read, "Sometimes the people you trust the most turn out to be the cruelest. Betrayal always comes dressed in smiles. Here's to cutting toxic people out of my life. Healing. Protect your peace. Family isn't always blood." I stared at it for a long time. There were already dozens of comments. Ugh, I'm so sorry, babe. You don't deserve this. What F happened? I hate when people turn on you for no reason. Your SEL has always seemed off to me. You're better without them. Let them go, queen. You're the real one. People who hadn't been at the party. People who only knew Rachel through filtered selfies and trauma-dumping stories about fake friends and narcissistic family members. She didn't mention my name. Of course not. She was too smart for that. But she didn't have to. Anyone who knew her vaguely knew I was the only sister-in-law in the picture. And the ones who didn't? They filled in the blanks with whatever narrative she fed them privately. I didn't comment. I didn't react. But others did. It started slow. A single comment. Quiet, almost surgical. You left out the part where you admitted to stealing her wedding ring. I was there. You said it yourself. From her cousin Jordan. Rachel deleted the comment within minutes, but that just lit the match. More rolled in. Gaslighting your own brother in front of 20 people isn't the move you think it is. I'm still shook that you threw the ring. You could have just handed it back. But no, drama. She didn't betray you. You betrayed yourself. You really said she lost it and now it's mine. Like that wasn't the most incriminating thing ever. By lunchtime, she'd turned off comments entirely. By dinner, she'd deleted the post. But it didn't stop there. Screenshots were shared, group chats lit up. One of the younger cousins had filmed part of the argument from the buffet table, just enough to catch Rachel saying the now infamous line and my mother-in-law calling her out on it. The video made its rounds in the family group text. Rachel left the chat less than an hour later. Then came the damage control. She started DMing people directly, one by one. Carefully tailored messages full of faux vulnerability. Telling some that she had a breakdown, telling others she was framed, and in at least one case, she claimed I had set her up and planted the ring on her. Aunt Carol responded to that one with a single line. Seek help, Rachel. Seriously? Even her usual defenders started falling silent. Her close friend Mia, who had commented, "You don't deserve this," earlier in the day, removed her comment. Another mutual unfollowed her completely. The image Rachel had worked so hard to maintain, funny, misunderstood, wronged by life Rachel, started cracking like a cheap foundation in the sun. Because people had seen it now. Not filtered, not edited, not in her control. They saw who she really was. And they weren't buying the rewrite. It's strange how silence can feel so different depending on the day. The silence after Rachel threw my ring? Heavy, stifling, suffocating. But the silence that followed in the days after, it was softer. Still uneasy, but no longer pressing down on my chest like a weight. More like an exhale. I wasn't looking for apologies. I didn't want anyone to grovel. I just wanted the world to stop spinning long enough for me to figure out how I felt. My ring sat in its dish again, right where it belonged. But I hadn't worn it yet. Not because I wasn't ready to forgive, but because I wasn't sure who I even was after all of this. Then came the text from Jordan. "Hey, just checking in. You okay?" I stared at it longer than I probably needed to. Not because I didn't know how to respond, but because it was the first message in days that didn't come with a side of drama or gossip. Just kindness. We met up the next afternoon at a coffee shop near her place. She was already at a corner table when I arrived, 2 drinks waiting. Mine had a little heart in the foam. "I guessed your usual," she said with a small smile. It wasn't even the right order, but it didn't matter. We sat there for nearly an hour. She didn't ask for details. She didn't fish for tea. She just talked to me like a person, not the victim of some family scandal. Eventually, she reached into her purse and pulled out a tiny velvet pouch. "I found this in the grass the day of the party," she said. "I thought it might be yours." It was the earring I'd lost. Not the ring, but a vintage gold stud from a set my mom had given me. I hadn't even realized it had fallen out during the chaos. Something about it made my throat tighten. "Thanks," I said quietly. She shrugged. It was nothing. But it wasn't. It was everything. The next day, I got a call from Aunt Carol. No pleasantries, no small talk. She just said, "You didn't deserve that. None of it." I thanked her. She paused. "Rachel's lucky you didn't press charges. If it were me, I'd have had her in handcuffs." That made me laugh. Really laugh. For the first time in weeks. Not because I wanted vengeance, but because it felt good to be seen. Later that week, my mother-in-law dropped by unannounced. She brought a lemon loaf and a potted succulent like she wasn't sure which was more appropriate for emotional reparations. We sat in the kitchen in a silence that was no longer cold. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For not seeing it sooner?" I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She gestured to the trinket dish on the counter where the ring sat again. "I had no idea how much it meant to you," she said. "It wasn't just the ring," I replied. "It was what it stood for, and how easy it was for everyone to believe I was overreacting." She looked down. "I didn't believe her either," she said. "Not deep down. But it's hard when it's your child, even when they're wrong." "I know." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We're going to make this right." That evening, I slipped the ring back on. It felt heavier than I remembered. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. It was no longer just a symbol of love. It was a symbol of what I'd survived. What we all had. Rachel's silence stretched for days. No posts, no texts. Just the digital void where her curated image used to live. And for the first time since it all began, I didn't care what she was saying about me behind closed doors, because I knew the people who mattered had already stopped listening. It was late. The kind of late where the world feels still, like even time itself has curled up and gone to bed. I was sitting at the kitchen table, cup of lukewarm tea in my hands, when he walked in. My husband. The man I'd built a life with. The man I'd loved fiercely. And, if I'm being honest, the man I had resented deeply over the past few weeks. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood in the doorway, eyes on me, then drifted toward the fridge like he needed something to do with his hands. "I saw your rings back on," he said gently, almost testing the words. I looked down at it. My grandmother's diamond, still faintly scuffed at the edge. "Yeah," I said. It felt like time. He sat across from me, arms resting on the table, fingers tapping lightly. "You were right," he said. "I should have listened." There was no defensiveness in his voice, no qualifiers, just the quiet truth. "I think I was scared," he continued, "of what it meant if you were right. About Rachel. About what that said about my family. About me." I didn't interrupt. I let him sit in it. "She's always been complicated," he said. "But I never thought she'd go that far. And I didn't want to believe she'd do something like that to you." I finally spoke. "It wasn't just that you didn't believe me. It's that I felt like I couldn't trust my own reality without being called dramatic." He looked up sharply, pain behind his eyes. "I know." "No, I don't think you do," I said, not unkindly. "Every time I brought it up, you made me feel like I was looking for something that wasn't there. Like I was inventing a reason to hate your sister. And that hurt, more than I expected." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I didn't protect you." There was a beat of silence between us, not awkward, just heavy. "But you're here now," I said. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. "I want to fix this, not just us. I want to make sure you never have to carry something like that alone again." My voice cracked when I said, "That's all I wanted." He stood and pulled me into a hug, one that felt unfamiliar at first, like meeting someone again after too much time. But as his arms wrapped around me and my cheek pressed into his shoulder, I let myself exhale. No dramatic music, no montage of healing, just warmth. Just breathe. Just us. We stood like that for a long time. Some betrayals cut louder than words ever could. And sometimes the hardest part isn't the act itself. It's the doubt it plants in your relationships, in yourself. But the truth has a way of surviving. It lingers in the space between silence and apology. It shows up in the people who stay, and in the ones who finally see you clearly. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Rachel, but I no longer feel the need to justify what happened. Because in the end, the ring came back. But more importantly, so did I.